All right, next up we have Warlock. My reveal was for Warlock, so I've talked a little bit about these, but I did mostly in a creepy, dark conductor voice before. So we're gonna talk about them in a normal voice now. I actually, funny story, I did that creepy, dark conductor voice because I had basically no voice after last weekend when I did my LARP event, and was like, how can I make the fact that I sound all hoarse and raspy be part of this instead of just seeming weird? And well, that's how we got there. Anyway, our first Warlock card is Demonic Dynamics. 3-cost Fell Spell, discover 2 demons. With Finale, give them +1/+2. Warlock has a lot of ways to generate resources, and there's a lot of mediocre demons. So even with like just, 3-cost discover 2 demons, give them +1/+2, doesn't really necessarily feel super exciting to me. Maybe you want to play a deck that is specifically looking to play just big demons or just big undead and wants to have access to more minions or something like that. But it just feels like Warlock has better tools for generating resources than this. So I don't really expect this one to see a lot of play. Next up is Symphony of Sins. Discover and play a movement, shuffle the other 6 into your deck. I totally forgot this card existed and do not have the graphics of all of them prepared. So I'm looking them up right now. Each of the movements are 3-cost spells. There is a Life Steal, deal 6 to the enemy hero. Remove the top 6 cards from your opponent's deck. Give a random minion in your hand, deck, and battlefield +6/+6. Draw 6 cards. Draw your highest cost minion, reduces cost by 6. Summon a 6/6 demon with Taunt and Reborn. And deal 6 damage to all characters. So this is just a very cool card. I think this is a few things. One, it gives you, the modality of when you play this. You can choose any of these, right? So you discover and play, well, I guess you play one of 3 of them. So you're not necessarily guaranteed to get the one that you want because it is a discover effect, right? So if you discover, you aren't necessarily able to play this and be guaranteed that, hey, I'm dealing 6 damage to all characters. So that can be a little problematic in terms of just how expensive it is and the variation that you get in the various effects that you have. You're pretty likely to get something within the category of stuff that you want. Like if you're looking for a way to defend yourself against opposing board, you're very likely to either get the 6/6 Reborn Taunt or 6 damage to all characters, and then shuffle the other 6 into your deck. There's a lot of powerful effects there over the course of the game. All of these are relatively powerful overall effects. Just a matter of what you actually want at any given time. So I think this is the sort of card that in a Warlock deck that's looking to play a slower controlling game is quite powerful. It can give you the ability to reload your deck so you don't necessarily get fatigued. As long as you don't play the draw 6 one, you can stave off fatigue a little bit. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very, very cool card, and it feels like they're missing the 7th of them, but maybe that's the movie. Next up, we have Rin, Orchestrator of Doom. So it's a 5-cost 3/6 taunt death rattle, just like the original Rin. With both players draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and destroy the top 2 cards of their deck. So this is, a powerful tool for, just general disruption. This is something that's like, hey, we're gonna go toward fatigue. There's not much you can do about it. This is a great way to disrupt your opponent's combos. The fact that it makes players discard cards is one of the only cards in the game that you can, actually just make your opponent discard key cards from their deck, right? There's not very many cards that you can end up making your opponent discard a minion or a spell, right? So this is a very unique card in terms of how disruptive it is, and I'm honestly a little bit surprised that it is able to do as much as it does. Obviously, it disrupts you as well because it affects you in addition to affecting your opponent. But overall, this is the sort of card. It's okay, if you're playing against combo, this is going to really, really annoy them. There's nowhere their card can be to be safe because you can make them discard it from their hand or remove it from their deck. And if you have, any way to get this back or copy this death rattle, this could just be absolutely nightmarish. So I like the existence of this card. It's not something that's hey, you necessarily build toward this, though maybe you do, because there are, the cards that I was able to reveal in my video that care about fatigue, and driving yourself toward fatigue make those more powerful. But next up, we have Opera Soloist. Is a 4-cost 4/6, or rather 5-cost 4/6 demon. If you control no other minions, deal 3 damage to all enemy minions. I mean, this is a reasonably powerful, just like control Warlock card. You know, if getting a 4-cost 4/6 that nukes your opponent's board is pretty strong. You know, this is a super powerful card against, like, say, Imp Warlock, right? You know, if you're just playing a bunch of cheap removal and then you play this, you know, or you have like a small thing you're able to trade off, and then boom, I have a body and did 3 damage to all of your minions. It's a very powerful effect. So as to whether like you'd rather have this than other options, that's unclear, right? Because there are better just mass removal effects, right? Like especially with the Hellfire is now 3 mana instead of 4 mana. So you have effectively, if you're not playing your own minions, well, Hellfire is doing the same thing as this but cheaper. Obviously, it damages you as well. But you know, if you're just looking for mass removal, it's like, okay, well, 1 more mana, you have Entitled Customer. You know, it is, I think, a card that specifically encourages you to be playing a slower, more defensive, less board-based Warlock deck, which there's a lot of ways to lean on that. But in the instances where you do have minions that you can't necessarily trade off and your opponent has like a wide board, it's like, okay, well, now this just doesn't work, and that becomes a little bit problematic. So next up, we have Void Virtuoso, a 1-cost 1/3 demon. During your turn, your hero is immune. So obviously this can be reasonably powerful just by itself of, hey, I'm going to, you know, do things that would damage me, like life tap. Default is just I life tap and I don't take damage for it. But most importantly, this is a very powerful tool with the cards that I revealed, which are the various fatigue cards. So let's look at some of those. They have, boom, Crazed Conductor. This is a 5-cost 4/5 with Battlecry, take fatigue damage. Summon that many 1/1 imps. So I revealed this entire package as part of my my video, and this is one of the powerful ones, I think, in the package. So summon that many 1/1 imps. So by default, the first time you play this card, if you've played nothing else, this is 5-cost. Take a damage, get a 4/5 and a 3/3. That's okay, right? That's okay. The second one is 2 4/5s and 2 3/3s. That's significantly more powerful, and you take 2 damage. The third one, you see where I'm going here. And this isn't necessarily the third one of these. It's if this is the third one of this category of cards, because there's a variety of these. Like this, for instance, Baritone Imp, take fatigue damage, and this gains that much attack and health. So, I mean, this is something you can literally just play on turn 2, and it's like, okay, I have a 2-cost 3/3. Not amazing, right? But fine. And it's ratcheting up the power of the other cards that care about taking fatigue damage. And it's worth noting, this will increase the damage that you take when you actually take fatigue later in the game. So, when it says take fatigue damage, it's just like if you were drawing a card with an empty deck. It's 1, then it's 2, then it's 3, then it's 4. And if you hit fatigue first, it's whatever the fatigue was, +1, right? So if you already have an empty deck and you've already drawn a card, it's making these more powerful, but making them more dangerous to you. And then there's the truly, truly nutty one, the kind of finisher here of Crescendo. Take fatigue damage, deal that much damage to all enemies. So you can theoretically, like, draw your deck, have, like, a Fell String Harp to prevent some of it. This is whenever your hero would take damage your turn, restore 2 health instead. So this goes very well with the fatigue cards for, hey, I'll take fatigue. Aha, but instead, I'm going to gain some life. So you can set up like Fell String Harp into take fatigue, into, you know, making these more powerful. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, ta-da! We have reached the crescendo. And I just nuke my opponent. Take fatigue damage, deal that much damage to all enemies. So this is just a super, super interesting overall suite of cards because, you know, especially alongside something like Void Virtuoso that is preventing the actual fatigue damage, you get this ratcheting up power level of these effects that is also very precarious for you because if, you know, for instance, these do not win you the game, or if, for instance, you know, your opponent kills your Void Virtuoso and then you're like, oh, well, now I actually take my fatigue damage and now that's a ton of damage and I'm dead. But yeah, like the fact that it is using fatigue as what is, you know, a core game mechanic, which is, you know, exists so that games don't go on forever, and allowing you to play with that and using it kind of as a resource to empower these cards is just a very interesting concept to me. And, you know, you could you can use these in a variety of ways, right? You could be using these as, hey, I'm just playing these cards out, right? And they're just effectively kind of like relics, right? They just like ramp up in terms of how powerful they are. Or you can play these and be like, okay, I am going to tear through my deck and actually take fatigue damage and make these cards more powerful. And then maybe I refill my deck with something like Symphony of Sins, right? Maybe I'm like using this to stave off fatigue when I'm using Rin over here to get closer to fatigue, so that you kind of have this precarious balancing act of getting everything exactly right so that your fatigue doesn't kill you and you're able to leverage the power of all these cards to actually end the game and beat your opponent. So it's pretty cool. I don't know how good it is, right? Because, you know, your deck basically being built around, hey, I make a bunch of 3/3s and I have a couple cards that AoE you and shoot you in the face. How good is that at actually winning the game? I don't know, but it's cool. Anyway, we have one final Warlock card to check out, and that is Dirge of Despair. So this is 6 cost, deal 3 damage to a character. If that kills it, summon a demon from your deck. So speaking of big demons, there are a few like reasonable big demons, I think, currently in Standard prior to the core set. My mind is kind of blanking on what they are. But Mal'Ganis and the 5/7 like taunt with Death Rattle, make a 5/5 lifesteal are both in the core set. So this can very easily be kill your guy, make an 8-drop or a 9-drop. And as, you know, the pool of big demons increases, you'll have more than like Mal'Ganis and Enhanced Dreadlord to choose from for big stuff. So I'm very interested in like how this could potentially enable that style of deck. You know, it's basically Bane of Doom 2.0 that rather than giving you a random demon that probably stinks, allows you to build a deck that supports it. So I'm a fan. I like it. But overall, Warlock, I like the Warlock stuff. As I went on about, I really do like the fatigue mechanic. I'm very curious to see how it actually plays out in reality. I think it seems cool conceptually. There's only so many cards that work with it, and you know how well those cards can actually win the game, I think is a very open question. And I'm quite curious to see, you know, how they actually stack up against, you know, other decks and, you know, what you can actually do in particular, like without like hero cards anymore, right? All the hero cards are gone. So the ability to like win a longer game with incremental effects like that is a lot better than it was when, you know, you had things like Cariel or Scabs or Zarella or whatever that were giving you this like just really powerful long-term value that could overtake a game. And if you didn't have something similar, would just end it, right? And, you know, now do these things do enough? Are they better, you know, than like curses at actually closing out that kind of game? Maybe with Bran gone, but maybe not. So overall, definitely interested in exploring it, and certainly will mess around with it and maybe do so in a ridiculous costume with a ridiculous voice. All right, we are at the final class, which is Warrior. Now, Warrior has gotten a lot of flack. A lot of people have been like, oh, you know, like complaining to devs about like how they think Warrior's terrible. You know, none of the cards are good enough, blah, 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 blah. And I think people are crazy. I really like a lot of the new Warrior stuff. And I think that people are looking at what was, you know, the performance of Warrior for a long time against a lot of very powerful decks. And it wasn't like unplayably bad. Warrior, I think, had a lot of spots of the course of the last expansion or two where it was okay, but not great. And I think that there are a lot of cool things for Warrior in this expansion, and some of them that I think feel like they have the potential to be quite powerful. I do feel like Warrior fundamentally is often in an awkward spot because of the nature of its hero power, because its hero power is bad in a lot of decks. Its hero power is just keeps itself alive, and it's best when it's playing control. And a lot of the tools that Warrior has in a lot of instances that end up getting supported are more proactive decks that can't really take advantage of the hero power, and that I do think is fundamentally problematic. But there, you know, are, I think, a lot of reasonable tools available to Warrior in both the new core set as well as in this expansion. So, with that said, first talk about Bridge Riff. This is one of the Riff cards, and the Riff cards have gotten a bit of flack because individually they do not look that powerful. Specifically, here we'll just go to this one. Verse Riff has been one that people were basically making fun of. They're just like, compare this to Claw. Claw, back when Hearthstone was released, was 1 mana for +2 attack, +2 armor. And now you get this. It's like, yes, but this has more game text. And I think it's incredibly disingenuous to make that comparison because obviously when something does something else, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be, it's going to be different. So these Riff cards all have Finale, play your last Riff. And that can be a quite powerful effect. Obviously, +2 attack, +2 armor for 2. That independently is not a good card. But if you're spending 2 mana to get +2 attack and +2 armor, and also getting your Bridge Riff. So with 2 mana, you get +2 attack, +2 armor, a 4/3 rush, and a 3/4 taunt. That's powerful. That's a very powerful card, right? And I feel like people are looking at these completely incorrectly. They're looking at them as just the individual cards when these are a package that each individually powers up the others. And yes, that is going to take up a lot of space in the deck. If you don't get Finale off on them, yeah, they're significantly worse. But they are much more powerful than just the straight up text because of the Finale. And obviously the first one you play is going to feel overcosted, right? Because you didn't play a last Riff, so the Finale does nothing on the first one you play. But once you've actually played one of the more powerful ones, like here we have Chorus Riff. Draw a minion, give it +2/+2. Finale, play your last Riff. So if you just turn 2, play, get 2 armor, 2 attack, maybe you kill a minion with it, right? Maybe you just punch your opponent in the face. Then you play this. It's like, okay, here's 2 more armor, 2 more attack, draw a minion, +2/+2. That is pretty powerful. And then once you actually are playing things like your Bridge Riff and getting, copying your Bridge Riff with things, those are all reasonably powerful, right? They're not like relics in that they continue to get more powerful. But they all individually key off of one another and are much more powerful than they are just on the face of it, right? And I think that people are not giving any sort of credit to the fact that you're getting additional effects from each of these once you actually finale them. And these are, much like relics though, things that you can get off of Discover effects. You can keep getting more Riffs that will play your previous Riffs. I'm not saying that necessarily these are crazy power cards and that a Riff deck is going to be a top tier metagame deck, right? They feel like they're probably not the best, but those sort of comparisons I think are just so incredibly disingenuous and just make the person making them look foolish, and certainly not the people who design the cards. So the archetype that is actually supported by this set that I am more excited for though is Menagerie. Let's take a look at Rockmaster Voon. Battlecry, copy a minion of each minion type in your hand. So this obviously is a legendary card. You only get to play with one of these, but this is a very powerful effect. This is, generates a bunch of value. It itself is not a particularly powerful tempo card, but there are a number of powerful tempo tools in the sort of Menagerie toolkit, like for instance, this one. I do think that this one, it feels a little bit weird that this card exists in the exact same form as the rogue one with combo, but the rogue one gets +1 health. But get +1/+1 for each minion type you play this game. It's pretty easy to play minions and tempo. That's the thing when you look at those two cards next to each other, that combo cards don't fundamentally generate tempo and board presence the same way that playing a minion does. And when you think about like what exists in the current metagame, there's both Amalgam and Mistake. So it's very easy to get a bunch of minion types. Granted, playing Amalgam does not count as 9 things for this, right? It counts as just an additional 1 past the number of all the other things that you've played. I assume that a dual type thing will only count for 1 in this. Maybe I'm wrong, right? But that's my understanding is that, and I think that the wording on this is a little bit confusing in that. I assume it means for each minion, for each type among minions, with each minion only possibly counting for 1. Is I don't know how you actually write that, but I know that Amalgam and Mistake only count for 1. I don't know if a dual type thing counts for 2, but I know that Amalgam and Mistake will count for 1 and not literally everything. But this can get pretty big pretty quickly, right? If you play, say, something on 1, you play an Amalgam or whatever, and then this can very easily just be 4/5 rush, very quickly. I do kind of wish this had a type in itself. It's weird to have a card that is a minion type payoff card that doesn't itself have a minion type, because you're going to have other things that care about minion types in your deck that cares about minion types. So I wish this was like, I don't know, a Quel'Thalas or something, rather than having no type, especially because there are cards like this, Roaring Applause. Draw a card, repeat for each minion type you control. Like having minions that you want to play in your deck that cares about minion types that don't have minion types feels weird when you have other cards that also care about minion types. Currently, I control a dog, so I will draw 2 cards. And a lot of people complain about how Warrior has bad card draw. This is extremely good card draw, right? Like, this is actually, like, you know, this is baseline 2-mana draw card. Obviously not good, but, like, if you have 2 minions, very easily, this is 2-mana draw 3 cards. 3 or 4 minions, draw so many cards, right? Like, this is a very, very powerful card. So this, alongside like the tempo from something like this, which is going to get bigger and bigger as the game goes on, especially with, again, with Amalgam and Mistake in your deck, which you're definitely going to have, are very powerful. And there's a 2-drop beast. I think it's like Party Animal or something that gives +1/+1 to minions of different types in your hand. That is an incredibly powerful tempo tool for a Menagerie style deck. So Menagerie Warrior is the warrior deck that I am interested in trying, because I think that it is very, very good. Like, has a lot of very powerful tools. I don't know if it's necessarily like, you know, going to end up being like a top tier deck, but like it has a lot of tools that are appealing, and it has, you know, card draw, tempo tools, ability to like actually, you know, pressure. I like it. And I think that people saying like, you know, that there's no chance that this can possibly be good, Warriors doomed, yada, 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 especially with things like Sword Eater coming back, which is an incredibly powerful card, by the way, are really just like riding the meme of negativity to their own detriment. So let's look at some of the other cards. Razorfen Rockstar. 1 cost, 1/3 Quel'Thalas. After you gain armor, gain 2 more. There is unfortunately no Armor Smith for this to play with. So you can't, Armor Smith is no longer in the core set. You can't like go nuts with like Razorfen Rockstar plus Armor Smith plus like Whirlwind or whatever and gain like 8 trillion armor. But there are still, you know, lots of warrior things that do gain armor. It is still a 1 cost, 1/3. It's Quel'Thalas, so all those things are relevant to, you know, the like a bunch of different warrior style decks, whether it's like Menagerie or whatever. Drum Soloist. This card is a little weird to me. It's a 5 cost, 5/5 dragon with Taunt. Battlecry, if you control no other minions, gain +2/+2 in Rush. This feels like the sort of card that would kind of want to go into a Menagerie deck, because, you know, hey, it's like a, you know, it's a dragon or whatever, can be that for your Menagerie deck. But it's pretty bad if you are likely to want to have a bunch of minions. If you do have, like, you know, say the Party Animal buff or whatever on this, or if you're just playing this in like more of a controlling deck, like a 7/7 Rush Taunt for 5 is very good. That's a ton of stats, right? And it can kill something before they can, you know, they can get through it. Yeah, it's just good. It's just that like activated is good, but it doesn't feel like it necessarily goes into the other style of deck that they're supporting. So this is more of like a control warrior card, it feels like to me. Black Rock and Roll. Give all minions in your deck attack and health equal to their cost. So this is like a charge warrior type card, right? Like this is like Lorthamar. Like this goes into like a Lorthamar warrior deck, right? Like this wants to be like, okay, you're playing Lorthamar, you're playing this. You don't care necessarily which order that you play them in. Lorthamar, I guess this before Lorthamar is going to be better because it's going to, you know, give them buffs and then double them. So like then you just play a Trench Stalker and your opponent dies, right? Like, you know, you play this and then you play Lorthamar, and your Trench Stalker is what? It starts at 8. It's be 17. So yeah, it's just 34 power and they die. Yeah, you play this with like Remornia. There's just like, this can do so many cool things. And if you want, you can play this with warrior card draw like this, so you actually get to your stuff. Or you play that with like Finley. It's just, this card feels like it enables some pretty crazy styles of decks that can do like really, really nutty things. And, you know, again, between like that and Lorthamar, you have multiple like, hey, I buffed my deck effects. And then you just need to get into your deck and find those cards and kill your opponent with them. Next, we have Kodo Hide Drum Kit. It's a weird one to me. 4 cost, 3/2 weapon. Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to all minions. Gain armor while equipped to improve. This, like, feels like the sort of thing. It's like, hey, you can play this in, like, you know, like Enrage Warrior, then it's like, okay, but if you actually like gain armor with it, you just kill your own stuff. But this card is like in a Control Warrior deck, right? In a Control Warrior deck, this can just be a weapon that can just, you can just sit on, and then it just like wraths your opponent for 0 effectively. Like you just have this and you just like sit there armoring up when your opponent doesn't have stuff. And you can just like sit there on, Death Rattle, deal like 1,000,000 to all minions. And that can be really powerful in itself, right? Like maybe this is something that you play in like, the sort of Lorthamar deck that I was talking about, right? Because one of the problems with a deck like Lorthamar Trench Stalker sort of thing, right, is that you got a bunch of stuff that's expensive. And sometimes you just need to clear the board and play your things and like be able to clear the board, like having set up this previously. You set up your Kodo Hide drum kit previously, and you just sit there and play control and armor up, and maybe play your other spells. And then you're like, okay, I can swing with my drum kit, clear the board, and play my Lorthamar at the same turn. You're not like essentially like putting yourself in a position where you cannot play your big expensive setup card because you need to play removal every turn. So I feel like this is like, I've seen a lot of people complain about this card and say that they don't think it's good. I think this card is actually quietly very powerful. It's just a matter of where it's good, and I think this is good in a deck that wants to play like a controlling game, but has swing turns with stuff like Lorthamar, stuff like just big minions, where it can actually afford to play those big minions because it gets to clear the board by just attacking with its weapon. Yeah, I think this is a card that's been highly underrated, and definitely has a home in certain types of decks. That's everything. That's all the Warrior cards. So I talked a little bit about the Riffs. I feel like the Riffs are a little bit underwhelming. I do think that they're a lot better than people are making their comparative memes with, because it feels like I just don't know where they what's the deck that plays these, right? Like what is the deck that actually wants to be doing all of the various effects that the Riffs do, and they do, like each being able to play off one another are pretty powerful, and especially if you can discover additional Riffs with, spell discovery, things like that. That feels like it gives them, more opportunity to shine, but it does feel like none of them are really giving you like a tremendous direction with what these Riffs want to do. Like specifically, like this one being like +2 attack, +2 armor. It's like, okay, am I just trying to play aggressively and like play this on turn 2 and then play this on turn 3, draw something, buff it, hit you? Because they all kind of do different things that are all like very mid-rangey. I don't know. It's interesting. So these are the ones that I'm the least sure of like. I feel like they feel like they ought to be powerful because you do get such a magnified effect if you're able to finale them. But I just don't know that they all push you in a direction that actually is good. But what I do think is good is the Menagerie stuff. I feel like this guy's good. I feel like this guy's good. I feel like the tools that are available for Menagerie Warrior are pretty exciting. This card, people complain so much about Warrior not having good card draw, and this is great card draw for a Menagerie Warrior style deck. This can easily be like a draw 3, draw 4 for 2 mana. And it baselines at cycle, like most of the time, it's going to be incredibly rare that your opponent can stop you from being able to get at least 2 cards and probably 3 with this. So my direction that I would take Warrior, and that is likely to be the first Warrior deck that I try during theory crafting, is Menagerie. And then again, I feel like the drum kit is something that like is a heavy control style card that is for setting up to be able to clear the board and do something else in the same turn. It's less about like, hey, this is like, I'm like, using this to like damage my own minions, for like enraged style deck. It's more like I'm just going to sit back, gain a bunch of armor, and then this drum kit allows me to like clear off your board and play a big thing in the same turn and not be behind. So that is what this reads to me. But yeah, overall, Warrior, I get it. I get that people, are frustrated with Warrior's lack of effectiveness in the past couple metagames. It was really powerful, early last year with Journey to Sunken City. And, I think was rightly toned down. I think there are a lot of powerful new tools for Warrior in the core set. I think that Woodcutter's Axe is quite good. I also think that Sword Eater is something that is so overlooked in terms of just how powerful that card is. That card is so, so good. And it's back. And it's going to be a very major player, I think, in a lot of different Warrior decks over the course of its time in Standard once again. And also, these cards. Menagerie Warrior. Hey! I already control a dog, so I'm on my way there. And we are on to the final stretch of neutral cards. A lot of these will be less exciting than some of the class cards, so probably go faster. Let's start with Obsessive Fan. 4 cost 2/6, choose a minion. It has stealth while this is alive. So this is basically a stalker that can never find them. This is the sort of effect that can be a little scary, you know, being able to give certain things stealth. Obviously, it isn't stealth like permanently. You know, if you kill the Obsessive Fan, it does remove the stealth so you can actually kill the thing, but this is a 6 health minion. I wonder what happens, if you do play this with something else, like Red Herring, right? You play this with Red Herring, do they both just have stealth? Because Red Herring says your non-Red Herring minions have stealth. So do all your things have stealth? If you have this with Red Herring, if you're a fan of Red Herring, boom! None of your minions can be attacked. Stealth forever. I don't know if that's good, but maybe it does that. Yeah, well, if each is a fan, I guess you can't have a fan of one another. Anyway, probably not powerful, but can do some weird stuff. Next up, we have Crowd Surfer. 1 cost 1/1 Murloc. Give any other minion +1/+1 in this death rattle. So, crucially, this is old school Murlocs, buffs any minion, so it can actually hit your opponent's minions. This, maybe is a powerful card in a aggressive deck that's likely to have a lot of minions, but this is the sort of thing that can backfire so easily that feels like it could be troublesome. It is a Murloc. Murloc, if you're playing like an aggressive Murloc deck, being able to play this into a bunch of other Murlocs, if your opponent doesn't AoE you, can make it just harder and harder for them to actually ever clear your board. But it itself is not particularly stable, and your opponent being able to steal the death rattle certainly makes it seem like it's not the sort of thing that's likely to be crazy powerful. Next up, Rolling Stone. 2 cost 2/2 Rush. If the last card you played costs 1, get +2/+2. This is the Curve Stone. Get it? It really wants you to curve. It's a stone. This is, if you play a 1-drop and then you have a 3/3 Rush for 2, that's pretty good. It's certainly much worse later in the game, but being able to have the perfect curve stone is kind of sweet. So I'm curious to see if we end up with more sort of elemental stuff. You could easily play this in say Menagerie Warrior, right? Like if you're playing turn 1 something, turn 2 3/3 elemental that works with your Menagerie stuff. You play whether it's the 1/3 Quel'Thalas on 1, or you play, a Mistake on 1, definitely has some potential there. And the fact that it has Rush definitely makes it a reasonably powerful card for board control as well. Next we have Festival Security, a 2/5 taunt with Finale. Force all enemy minions to attack this. It's weird that this doesn't have a minion type. It looks like a turtle, so it feels like it should be like a beast or something. I just want more minion types for my Menagerie guys. But yeah. A 2/5 taunt for 3 is reasonable against an aggressive deck. Against Imp Block or whatever. Being able to play this and kill a bunch of small minions is pretty powerful. So this I think feels like the sort of thing that against small utility minions, Peasant, even if Peasant is rotating, things like that it has some potential. Next up is Metronome. I have to play a 1-cost card, draw a 2-cost card, then increase. So this is kind of cool, other than the fact that it itself costs 3, so it's very slow to get online. But another Curve Stone card, you just absolutely play a 1, draw 2, play a 2, draw 3, play a 3, draw 4, play a 4, draw 5. It's pretty cool. It's, a neat card draw tool. It just feels like it comes online so quick, so slowly, that it is difficult to really take advantage of it, and the stats aren't that good. But it does feel like the sort of card that, if you get it online, it is going to be very, very powerful. Next up, we have Frequency Oscillator. A 1-cost 2/1 mech. Battlecry, the next mech you play costs 1 less. This is reasonably strong. Anything that is cost reduction is typically quite strong. And being able to ramp up your mechs. We've seen a number of mechs with magnetic and stuff back. It is a 2/1, so it dies pretty handily. But even then, like, your opponent spends mana, whatever, killing this, and it's like, okay, well, it already let me play a 3-drop on turn 2, which can be pretty powerful by itself. So I think that this card is very likely like quite powerful in something like Mech Mage, and there's a lot of good new tools for that are coming back in the core set. So we have Candle Raiser. Divine Shield Finale, give adjacent minions Divine Shield. Interesting. This feels like, it feels okay at best. Feels like mostly like a very powerful arena card, quite likely. But seems like it, you kind of need to have curved out for this to really be pretty effective. And you can do that. Even just like you're kind of overpaying for a 3/3 Divine Shield these days pretty heavily. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if you have like other sort of Divine Shield synergies, it could be good, but feels pretty difficult to get that to work very well. Next we have Concert Promo Drake. It's a 8-cost 8/8, tradable, and Finale, destroy an enemy minion. The fact that this is tradable is actually kind of sick. Like, this feels like the sort of thing that you can like have in as like a top end card in like an aggressive style of deck. And it's like, okay, I can just trade this. Like this could be like a Menagerie Warrior card, right? Like you play like one of these or, whatever. It's like, okay, well now, once you actually hit 8, you're like, boom. And it's not like random, right? This is destroy an enemy minion, not destroy a random enemy minion. So this can be like extremely powerful. Like if this weren't tradable, I think this card would be like pretty bad, right? Because it's just like 8 cost 8/8, right? With obviously just destroying an enemy minion is pretty powerful. But the fact that it's tradable means that like, even when it would otherwise be rotting in your hand, you can get rid of it and bring it back later when it's actually going to get the job done. Next up we have Paparazzi. Battlecry, discover a legendary minion. I mean, it's a cool card. That feels like a card that's going to be nutty in Arena. It's a common that has Battlecry, discover a legendary. Oh boy. Probably not likely to see much play in Constructed though. Next up is Freebird. First of all, hilarious name. Secondly, 4-cost charge 2/2 with Battlecry, gain +1/+1 for each other Freebird you've played this game. I feel like this is going to be the sort of thing that's like, people try and play this with like, just a million shadow steps, all the various jump, shadow step and bounce effects in Rogue, and just try and nuke you down. I'm trying to think like, I think Dire Frenzy's gone, right? Like I'm just trying to think of like the other possible homes for this. There's like the Northridge Farmer is gone. That was in Stormwind, right? I just don't know where else this goes outside of Rogue. But yeah, Dire Frenzy's gone. Northridge Farmer's gone. Like other ways to just like get additional instances of this are kind of nowhere, right? I guess you can like keep making copies of it with the various copy beast things in Hunter. But even then, it's like, I don't know. I think this is mostly going to be a meme, but we said that about Elwyn Boar, and then Elwyn Boar was one of the most obnoxious decks in history. So, worth keeping an eye on and being appropriately frightened of. Next up, we have Worgen Roadie. Summon a 0/3 instrument case for your opponent. Break it for a random weapon. Meh. I feel like if you're going to be, you're going to be like trying to get weapons, you probably can there's weapons for every class now. You can play your own. Doesn't seem likely to be particularly good. It's neat. I think it's cool. I'm curious whether you equip the weapon or it goes to your hand. It's not clear from the text. If it goes into play, it's obviously much stronger than if it goes to your hand, because you could potentially get something very powerful. I assume it can be from any class because it's random, not discover. I don't know. It's a weird card. Maybe this is good against opponents who are trying to resurrect things, but mostly those are undead these days. Next up, we have Ghost Rider, a 5-cost 4/4 Battlecry, discover a spell. Finale, discover another. First of all, I love the name and effect combo. Secondly, I think this is like reasonable. It's an undead, so like there are classes that will have undead synergy that will like care about this. Like I could see this as being something that you play in like undead mid-range priest, if that's like ever a thing. It's like undead, so it can potentially key off of like your Shadow Word Undeaths. B, like if you're playing say like a more like mid-range control-y style of Undead Priest, it gives you the ability to find like healing spells or, non-shadow things. I think it's interesting. It's unlikely to be like, any kind of like all-star, but I think that it has the potential to be a role player in some places. Posic Audio Engineer, a 4-cost 5/4 Battlecry, add 2/3/3 bots to your opponent's hand, death rattle, summon them for yourself. It's a very weird card. So your opponent like basically needs to like play the bots before they kill this in order to not give you the bots. And if they play the bots, you don't get anything. But it's just like it's disruptive to their turn. I believe they're just 3-cost 3/3s. If I remember from the description of this, you give your opponent 2 3-cost 3/3 bots in their hand, and they can play them. And if they like spend their mana playing them, then great, they're playing like these inefficient things. But if they don't play them and and they kill this, you just get them anyway. So like it's like a disruptive a tempo disruptive aggro card. It's pretty interesting. Like I feel like this is a lot better than it looks because of how it awkwardly forces your opponent to spend their mana in potentially in a deck that is really pressuring their ability to spend their mana. I don't know that it necessarily has like any great home because it doesn't necessarily synergize with other stuff. But I feel like it's better than it looks. Next up we have Cowbell Soloist. You control no other minions, deal 2 damage. I feel like this card, in order to be competitive, needs significantly more cowbell. Next up we have Annoying Fan. 1/2 mech, battlecry, choose a minion. It can't attack while this is alive. Meh. I think this is more like of a funny thematic card that also can go into Annoyo Horn, apparently. But feels like it's balanced out by the fact that Annoyo Horn, this is the treasure card, can also now get the Annoyo Lord. Next up is the One Amalgam Band. So a 7-cost 6/6 battlecry, gain a random bonus effect for each minion type you've played this game. The random bonus effects are various keywords. I forget what the whole instance of them are, but this is like basically a curve topper for a Menagerie type deck. And this feels like a very likely to be a very powerful card for Menagerie Warrior. I think it just seems good, right? Like I don't know what all the effects are. If I remember correctly, they're things like Divine Shield, Lifesteal, yada 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 yada. I don't know if it could be stats. It might even be able to get like stealth. I don't think it can get charge. It can get rush, get divine shield, but it's just a powerful card, right? Like getting all of those just feels really good. And he's also by himself every type. So further powers up your other things that care about that. Kind of cool. I think he's sweet, and I will definitely be putting him into my Menagerie Warrior deck. Next up, we have Cover Artist. Battlecry transforms into a 3/3 copy of a minion. So this is just Faceless Manipulator, but it costs 4. I guess it's a 3/3 copy of it, so doesn't gain everything. Never mind. What am I talking about? Yeah, I mean it probably has similar sort of other than copying stats, similar places that what you want Faceless to get like death rattles or things like that. Meh. It's certainly the sort of card that you need to pay attention to, right? Like if there are things that really care about having specific types of minions, extra copies of things that has potential, but not the sort of card that I think like immediately stands out as like, okay, well, you build a deck around this. You can use this to get multiple Ragnaros with Jive Insect. That's true. You can get an 8/8 Ragnaros and a 3/3 Ragnaros. And here's the party animal. Let's talk about this during the warrior section. A 2-cost 2/3 battlecry, give +1/+1 to a minion of each type in your hand. I think this card is great. This card feels very powerful to me. Like it's a hand buff style card, but itself, obviously a 2-cost 2/3 is not great, not like inherently super powerful. But if you have a handful of like, say, 4 minions, 5 minions, and they have a bunch of different types, that's huge payoff, right? You played your 2-cost 2/3 and you got like just a ton of additional value from it by buffing the rest of your hand. I think this card is really good. It also has its own type, so like it works with the other things that care about your minion types. I just think this is just like a really 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 solid card for Menagerie decks, and I think one of the things that will really make them work. Next one is Audio Medic. This is a 2-cost 2/3 rush with finale gain lifesteal. I think this card's powerful. Like 2-cost 2/3 rush by itself is fine. That's a stat line we haven't seen before. It's like a very reasonable thing. With Finale Lifesteal, like this can be, you can hand buff this, like this could be in like, I remember I was talking about the like, blood hand buff Death Knight that like, it's like, oh, well, you can play like the guy who, is free if your health changed, and like this guy works incredibly well with that. You hand buff this and boom, lifesteal up, play your guys for free. They're all buffed. Just feels like a pretty powerful card in the right context. So this I think is kind of like a sleeper card of those that I've seen so far. Next we have Air Guitarist. Battlecry, give your weapon +1 durability. I think this card is like quietly actually potentially pretty powerful with all the various weapons that the classes have. Lots of them are like, the death rattle effect things, but like this maybe not necessarily in standard, but like, be able to even just like giving your like ruined mithril rod and wild more durability seems kind of scary. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if you if you are looking to have additional uses of weapons, like this is obviously a great way to do it. A lot of the weapons that are in the current set are like death rattle effects, which is certainly like less exciting for air guitar. But like using this alongside like Draka could kill your opponent, right? Using this alongside, Remornia keeps it alive. I don't know. It feels like this is the sort of thing. It's like when there is a weapon that cares about this, it can really, really care about it. Next up is Outfit Tailor. Give your friendly minion attack and health equal to this minion's. Clearly a hand buff style card, right? Like this like, can be a hand buff card that immediately translates the hand buff to the board. Could be something that's good in the blood blood hand buff DK I was talking about. Or, whatever. Even just by itself, it's just like 3 cost +2/+2 and a 2/2. But with, hand buff stuff, this could be, 3 cost +6/6, on a 6/6. I feel like this is like a card that is very likely to be a lot better than it looks. Next up is Audio Amplifier. This is my favorite like card thematically in the set. The fact that this one goes to 11, I love it. I love it so much. Just 2 cost 2/3, set your maximum mana and hand size to 11. This is the card that makes that like Mana Thirst 11 card in the mini set that we were all terrified by actually work still. But yeah, this card's great. I love it, and I could definitely actually see it being like reasonable in some sort of like controlling combo style decks, but mostly for the meme and for the fact that chat mana is real. Next up is Pyrotechnician. 4 cost 2/5. After you cast a spell, add a random fire spell to your hand. I feel like there's probably better value sorts of things that you could be doing, but maybe there's like maybe you just cast a bunch of super cheap spells and like try and get more things that turn your guys into Ragnaros. Next up is Amplified Elic. A 10 cost 6/12 taunt with death rattle, deal 3 damage to all enemy minions. This is basically like, hey, here's something you can put in your big beast deck. It's meh. It's pretty bad. But maybe you do play it in big beasts. Who knows? Next up we have Unpopular Has Been. Why'd they make a card about me? 6 cost 5/5. Death rattle, summon a random 5 cost minion from the past. I mean, this is like actually just stat wise pretty good. It's like a 6 cost 5/5 that gets you a 5-drop. Unlikely to be super popular or powerful, but like it is undead, so there are like synergies here. Maybe this is like one of the mid-range things in like death rattle DK, because it works with undead synergy stuff. It's a death rattle that generates something on the board. I do think the card is aptly named. It will likely be unpopular though. All right, Mishmash Mosher. 8 cost 3/10 rush. After this attack, gain +1 attack and attack a random enemy minion. So yeah, this is basically just like eat all your opponent's small minions. Yep, that's what it does. It's a very big undead to get off the Scourge. It gives you another like really powerful thing off of that. But yeah, this I feel like it's unlikely to be something that actually ends up like going to decks. Maybe this is like in like big undead priest, because there is what's her name, Katrina Morte, who's back in the core set, and having big undead for Katrina Morte can be very, very powerful. So maybe we see like basically like big res priest that's just a bunch of gigantic undead with like flesh behemoth and things like that. Next up we have Tony, King of Piracy. A 5 cost 4/6. Both players' decks are swapped with Finale Draw card. So crucially, this is not a battle cry. So you don't like play this and steal your opponent's deck. You swap decks as long as this is in play. So you can play this in like Warrior and cast Fire's Menagerie, and then you swap back when this dies, and now your opponent just has a deck full of minions. If you have a way to like just draw a million cards and just burn your opponent's deck and then swap back, is kind of cool. You can play this. Does this work? Yeah, you can play this with the Fire's Menagerie and then steam cleaner all the stuff that didn't start in the deck, even after you swap back. That works. That is like a way to actually potentially win with it. It does mean that you're playing Fire of Zinashari and Steam Cleaner in your deck, and you have they neither of which do anything until you draw Tony. But that, is a thing you can do, and I'm sure that there will be at least one YouTube video that shows off that. Next, we have Static Waveform. 3 cost 5/6 at the start of each turn, lose 1 attack or health chosen randomly. I mean, it's obviously huge, but it effectively, is a 4/5-ish for 3 that keeps shrinking, because it doesn't actually do anything until you get to your turn. I think this is probably not likely to see a ton of play, because every turn it keeps shrinking, and you're unlikely to be able to get value trades because it could just randomly die. You could silence it. Is it worth investing a silence to get like a marginally above rate 3-drop? Probably not. But yeah, I don't really see this as likely to see a lot of play unless you have some like easy way to just silence it. That doesn't cost you really any resources. Next up is Stereo Totem. 2 cost 0/3 Totem. At the end of your turn, give random in your hand +2/+2. We have Hand Buff Totem. Totem Shaman is something that I wanted to revisit in this set, because I felt like it was so close for so long, and then never really was. I'm lying. But this is medium in that deck. It's probably not actually even good in that deck, because that deck was mostly about building up a board with a bunch of totems, playing like buffing your totems, bloodlusting your totems. So having buffs in your hand didn't really work too well with totems. I don't know. Seems pretty bad, but it is neat that there is a hand buff card for any class. Could be a Menagerie Warrior. EDC Band Manager. By the way, one of the things that I'm happiest about in recent history is the update to the deck tracker that shows you what's in the ETC band. Thank you to you folks who made that happen, because holy cow, getting the question, what's in your band, what's in your band, what's in your band, every like 30 seconds on stream is very, very annoying. And yeah, that still happens, even though that exists, because people just don't look at it, but it at least happens less. Anyway, this card's great. We all know that. Next up, we have Rowdy Fan. A 3 cost 1/5 with Battlecry. Choose a minion. It has +4 tackle. This is alive. This is a pretty powerful card. Just a 3 cost minion that gives +4 attack is pretty strong for 3. You can just get your opponent for 4, and then they can trade into that. But obviously the body of this isn't that relevant, but like at that point. But this can be like a strong card in like Menagerie Warrior. You can just get them for like a big chunk of damage. And then this body, like, maybe you buff this with Party Animal, right? Maybe you play Party Animal in turn 2. Turn 3, you play Rowdy Fan. Hit them for 6 with Party Animal. And then you have a 2/6 Quel'Thalas here that, your opponent still needs to kill. And you have who knows what other ways to potentially buff it. So I think this is actually a very reasonable card. It's not amazing, but I think it is better than it looks on the surface. Next up, we have Instrument Tech. They 2 cost 1/3 Battlecry, draw a weapon. This feels like a pretty scary card for like any format where there's individual, like say like legendary weapons or something that you really, really want. It doesn't seem like it's necessarily scary in standard, but like in wild, like you being able to always have, your Twig of the World Tree, or your Atiash, or your Skull of Gul'dan, or whatever. Not Skull of Gul'dan. What's it called? Skull of Menagerie. That's what it was. I was like, whose skull? Whose skull is it anyway? Isn't that an improv show? But no, Instrument Tech. Again, I don't think this is like crazy powerful in standard. Like I said, it can be good if you try and build like a deck that has like particularly synergistic stuff with the weapons. But does feel like it is a scary thing moving forward with especially legendary weapons. Next up is Photographer Fizzle. 3 costs 3/3 with Battlecry. Take a snapshot of your current hand and shuffle it into your deck. This card's super cool. So basically, you shuffle one card into your deck that is a snapshot that when you draw it, you get all of your hand. I think you play it and it puts their hand, what your current hand is into play, not like immediately when you draw it. But yeah, it's basically Dead Man's Photograph, right? It's Dead Man's hand without like the like infinite loop of, hey, I have 2 of these, and without like taking up more slots in your deck. But yeah, I think it's very, very cool. I definitely want to fizzle raw math and go infinite with endless raw maths, because that's hilarious. But definitely like just a very cool card for any kind of long game. And especially, again, in a world where we don't have hero cards that dominate long games, cards like this can make a lot bigger difference. Next up, we have Merch Seller. 4 cost 3/5 Naga. The end of your turn, put a random spell on the top of your opponent's deck. This is a really obnoxious card. Like, this can potentially just like, if your opponent doesn't get away to actually kill it, They just can't draw from their deck again. Obviously, the random spells could do that, but this has the potential to just be like a really, really obnoxious effect. I doubt it's likely to be good, right? I doubt this is the sort of thing that's like, hey, you know, your opponent can't kill it and it just like locks them out or whatever. But man, is this annoying. And lastly, we have the Hipster. 2 cost 1/3, Battlecry Discover, a spell that from your opponent's class that isn't in their deck. It's like, hey, I heard about, you know, I'm just trying to think of a rogue spell that they wouldn't play. Sprint's gone. Anyway. This is like the Pandaren Importer. This is the Pandaren Exporter? I don't know. You get a card from their class that they didn't play. So it's a weird card. Like, you know, it feels like maybe you use this in like Thief Rogue. I don't know, that you can, you know, get a card to add to your tests. It's less powerful in Thief Rogue than it used to be. Obviously because you don't have stash anymore. Without Contraband Stash, you don't really have like the same value of getting cards from outside, you know, from your opponent's class, from outside your class. But it's cool. Yeah. And you get to say, oh, this spell, you've probably never heard of it, which is the flavor text for the card, which is kind of amazing. But yeah, that's our last card. That is the entirety of Festival of Legends. Overall, there's a lot of cool stuff in this set. One of the things I like about this set is that just a lot of individually cool cards. There are obviously specific packages of cards like Riffs or whatever that like you're being, you know, sort of pulled to play in the same deck. But I think it's just like, you know, it's just very cool the number of just like individually neat designs, individually cool and flavorful designs that exist in this set that aren't necessarily like, hey, do this, hey, do this. It's like, no, like this is just like a cool thing that you can try and find ways to make this work. And you know, much more sort of like modular design and things that can kind of slot into various different things. So super fun, super cool. The decks that I'm the most excited to try are probably the combination of, you know, this and the core set with like the Overkill Priest, and then Menagerie Warrior, because I want to prove everyone wrong saying that Warrior can't possibly win, because that's kind of what I do. But yeah, overall, really, really excited for this set. Definitely looking forward to getting a chance to play it. For those of you who are watching live, or if you catch this soon enough, this will definitely not be out by then, but we are doing the theory crafting stream on the 5th, and then we will have highlights from that going live every day on the channel until launch, and then we'll get to actual live games, and then we will also be posting any of this that you did not catch on the live stream on YouTube. So that'll all be going until the expansion launch, and then we all get to play with all the cool new stuff. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope you appreciated this review. Let me know if you think that I'm terribly wrong about anything in the comments. What's your favorite card you're looking forward to playing? Any decks that are really standing out to you? And I will see you all next time. Bye.